got a wonderful crowd today. I haven't counted, but I can see at least 30 heads out there. And with the minus 12 when I woke up this morning, and then when I left for coming here, it was still minus 7. So I was worried, but I'm no longer worried. Got Fran Gray up today for Hashing Over History. He's our third speaker in this 12-speaker series. Again, we want to thank the Thousand Islands Museum, the Historian's Office, the Sesquicentennial Committee, and the Clayton Opera House partnership in bringing these wonderful programs together. An opportunity to not only learn history about the area, but we learn history about the people. So it's personal history and it's Clayton history, all wrapped up into our 150th year, the Sesquicentennial. So, Fran Gray, I know a lot of people know you, they know of you, but today we're going to learn more about Fran Gray. Fran, the time is yours.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming out, braving the weather, and I will explain one thing about my voice. I have a condition that has affected my speech. So just be aware of that. I'll do my best, and it'll probably get better as we go along. It's called myasthenia gravis, and it affects your eyes, your voice, and so on. And the doctor said, I didn't write down notes because I have trouble writing. The doctor says, he set me up, thought I had Parkinson's. He says, no, you have an essential tremor. I says, whoever needed essential never had it. But anyway, so when you get older, things happen. Most of them are good, but if you look at the people over here, when we were kids, they didn't go to school when it got cold. Or when you got 3 inches of snow. But that's just one of the ways that things have changed in our world. So let's get started. This is a day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice. Okay. I've lived here my whole life, except when I went to college. But in the summers I returned. I was born in Watertown, married to a girl who was in the same class I was, up through school, Sally Churchill, which is her family has a long history in Jefferson County. And they put an article in there about it way back to one of the first settlers, Joel Austin Hubbard. But anyway, today we'll talk about my family. My mother was a Wiley, not related to the Wiley in Stevenson. Her father was Leland, her mother was Lita. They had 4 children, 1 girl. And let's see, my mother's 98. She's still alive. She has a brother who's about 94. I figured out the average lifespan of those 4 children, and it was at least 94 years old. So, maybe I don't know. But Leland was a paper hanger. He had a little farm. They lived 4 miles down the road towards Alex Bay, right on, where the new solar farm is, just on that curve past it. And you can see a little yellow, I still remember that truck, pickup truck, and he'd go around town. He did finish work, wallpaper, painting, and of course wallpaper was in style. So, my father's side, my mother and father were both born in 1923. So it's easy to remember, 23, 43, our son was born in 63. So I can always keep track of the ages. My father, or let's say father and mother were Ross and Lula. And I'm sure many of you remember them. Ross was mayor 4 times. They owned a store up on the corner, James Street and State Street. And they came here, I don't know whether it was 1928 or 29. Not a good time to buy a store. Right when the Depression was coming. They traded their house in Watertown for the store. They lived upstairs. And I don't know if they called it Gayhead Market. I think they called it Gray's. But it became Gayhead Market. I told my grandkids that. Kind of chuckle. Gayhead? Where did they get that name? I don't know. Maybe somebody does. But my father was in World War II. He became a pilot in the Pacific Theater. He didn't fly fighter planes. He flew transport planes. When they'd take an island, the first thing they do is build a runway. Then they start bringing in all the supplies. That was his job. I asked him once, I said, you ever see any Japanese? He goes, well, they gave us a pistol. That's all we had. You're a pilot. He said, well, once we had to fly a plane load of prisoners back. And that was the only time he ever saw any Japanese, fighters. Don't want to lose track of anything. Okay. Yeah, everybody can sit down. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, to go back to Ross, his father was Chauncey Woodruff Gray, who was wealthy. He in Watertown owned an ice company up at Huntingtonville, which is up State Street over towards Black River, up in there. And he owned 2 roller skating rinks. And he had the first bus line in Watertown called Gray's Auto Line. Over here I have pictures of him, my grandfather, and his brother and sister riding on that first bus, or whatever you want to call it. And he was wealthy enough to have a home in Jacksonville, Florida. So at that point, we're talking late 1800s, early 1900s. You take the train and go to Florida. That's where my grandmother and grandfather met, was at one of the roller rinks, because my grandmother was born in Canada. In her early years in Belleville, Ontario. They moved over here. The only one of my great-grandparents I remember was her father. He was a barber. And they moved to Glen Park. And he took a trolley every day into work, into Watertown. So they met. They were married. They had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children. The first one, Junior, died in infancy. The second one was Nell, then Francis, then Thelma, and then Joanna. Okay, my father was from Watertown, but he went to school here because the old story was that the school was up here where the municipal building is. That my grandmother, he didn't want to go, so she grabbed him by the ear, marched him right down the street and over to the school. And he went to school. And Joanne and Thelma both lived at Clayton and James Street. The other son, Francis, who you're getting the gist who I'm named after, he died when he was 17. And I have over here the obituary. Okay? And that was 1942, and I was born in 1943. So I was the new Francis. Okay, but it tells the story of how they were out fishing. He took a bite out of a candy bar and fell over the side of the boat. never swam a stroke, and died. So my grandfather had to get him to the surface and bring him back. They were in Canada. He didn't want to go into Canada. Got him back to America, found him, brought him back. But that's how I got my name. Okay. My wife and I have 3 children. Ross, who's named after my grandfather, but everybody knows him as Ty. Risha and Mike. Mike's here today. Mike runs business today. I'm still there, but I get there when I want. I leave when I want. I get my work done. And let's take it, you know, everybody says they're going to retire. I said, well, I think you ought to think about that. You know, what are you going to do? You know, there's one word that's not in the Bible. You know what it is? Retire. Because retirement is a post-World War II concept, I think. Right? Until after you got Social Security and, you know, things came in. But so anyway, but I'm thankful that I have a place to go, things to do, people to see, and it is very good. Now, Gray's Wholesale, that was started in 1951 by Ross, my grandfather, and father. My father came back from the war, had some money. He told me once, he says, I could have bought all that land from the school up to the East Line Road. From Grave Street to James Street. It was like $1,500. He said, no, I didn't buy it. I bought an airplane. He says, I put that towards an airplane. He said, and so I have pictures. One of the planes, a CB, that's what he called it. And it lay in the water, and you've all heard stories. They put it down behind what was then Huckford Hardware, which is Carlos. And he had a couple of young guys to help him sell tickets, catch the plane when it came in, help load passengers, Rip Carpenter, and I think Ralph Snell helped for a while. The Snells lived on Alexandria Street. And you gotta, how many days are you gonna fly people? Not on, when the water gets rough, it's gonna be tough. And so he ended up selling those, going to work for somebody, and they decided to open a wholesale candy place. And so we did it in I can remember this, I was 8, in the cellar of the house next to the wholesale. The house where I grew up. I originally lived on James Street, where Keogh's lived, the big white house, just next to the corner convenience store. And then we moved over to State Street and bought that house. I think it was from the Marcellus family. There had been a fire, I remember, in the basement of that house because some of the embers were charred. But anyway, we put shelves down there, we put the candy down there, and then we bought a panel truck. Put shelves in it, load it down the candy, and my grandfather would go out and go around to the stores and deliver the candy. My father still worked. He drove school bus. A couple of years he drove Turbo, the Spray 5, okay, to make ends meet. And gradually that business grew. And so you had to have more people. Then they decided, but well, let's take the orders and then deliver them. Because before, you delivered the product right on the spot, kind of like the potato chip guys come around. So that meant more people, more vehicles, okay? So then you started to grow. And that's the first Gray's Wholesale. About 1953 or 4, 1,200 square feet. Today it's 30,000 square feet. So we've added on.
Is that the spot where Bombard's was?
No, that's right where the front door is right now. That's the same front door.
Oh,
If
okay.
you go to walk in.
Because my father-in-law had to tear down Bombard's, and half of Clayton was mad at him for tearing it down. The coldest beer in Clayton.
Yeah. The coldest beer, you know why? Because every day our lane doe, who had the ice business on James Street, came there and they had the old copper coils, and every day he would put ice down his shoe to cool the beer, the coils, where the beer ran through before it came out to draft.
It had a reputation, that's for sure.
Yep, 15 cent draft beers, that's where I had my first legal beer. My grandfather took me over. So we had beer. And you remember, Bombard's also had a motel. I can talk about that later. Okay. Where was I? Oh. So we sold candy. And then we got to sell more because he started on cigarettes. So in order to sell cigarettes in New York State, you had to get a license. And in order to get a license, you had to get on direct with 2 cigarette manufacturers. So it's kind of a catch there, isn't there? They will give you a license, but yet you can't buy from those companies until you get a license. So we got on with one. And my grandfather from running the store said, I got an idea. There was a guy who used to call on him at the store and sell R.J. Reynolds tobacco. He was now the big wig for R.J. Reynolds. He got promoted up to chain. And so he called him up and said, hey Nate, you want to go fishing? So he came up, they went out and hired a guy, went out on the river, caught some fish, had the shore dinner, everything. Within a week, we were on direct from R.J. Reynolds. So, I guess it's good to know. So then we started into the tobacco business. It kept, we grew and grew. In fact, that one here, this is from 1967. Grace was chosen as the National Candy Wholesaler of the Year. And they put an article in there and showed some of the people working there. Fritz, he's here. He's in that picture, or one of a couple of those pictures. And so now we started expanding. One of the things my father had, we had the original Frito-Lay franchise in Jefferson and St. Louis County. But this is when they were just starting out up here. Now, obviously they control the market. But it meant kind of running one business out of another, so he decided that after a few years he sold it off to somebody. But then we started adding on again. You know where next to the Shervine, there's a long old building. And it originally, when I was a kid, I remember it as a plastics factory. And they made plastic parts. It was called, I think it was Electrobird or something like that, yeah? And then it became Grossman's Lumberyard. And Norm Kay used to run it. Okay, so they were getting out of the business, because if you went in one of the rooms up there, you look around and there's all different panels up there. That was their samples for selling paneling. But bought that building, put the two of them together, almost doubled the size of the warehouse. Okay, and then later, when I came on board, and I had to say, in the paper it told Gray's Businesses, I came in 1985. I left teaching. I was a school teacher for 20 years. 2 at Lyme, 2 at LaFargeville, 3 up at Clayton, and the rest up at Sand Bay, up at the high school. I came back, my father was sick, he was going to sell the business. So he came here one day and he says, I got somebody in my file. He says, if you want to come back, tell me. I said, okay, I'll think about that. I knew what the answer was, but He says, tell me in the morning.
Get a good night's sleep.
Yeah. So anyway, I told him, and I got a year's leave of absence from school. And my sister, Lorraine, and I purchased Gray's Wholesale from him in 1988. And we paid him so much every month. And the last payment, he says, oh, I never thought I'd live long enough to see this. Okay, and then later, Lorraine has since retired. I have purchased her half. Now it's going to Michael, okay, who's worked there since practically out of college, 1990, maybe 89, 90, somewhere in there. So he's worked there. So it didn't mention Lorraine, but I want to mention because she also worked there for 40 years. Okay, Bud didn't seem interested. Bud went other ways. Bud owned and also worked in great businesses. It didn't mention the B&D, Bernie Consulting store, but for a while the Gray family owned that. And they built the Victorian. Bud built that, and originally the restaurant for the Subway was a restaurant originally. And Charlie and Dolly were the first cooks there. Okay? But that ended up being sold, and I think Bud is doing what he enjoys. Bud, kind of like his grandfather, Leland, he enjoys working with his hands, woodworking, and he's good at it. So his life is letting him that way. Or was that now? Okay. It was her 70th anniversary last year, and somebody asked me what they're most proud of. Is first of all, 5 generations have worked there. Now, granted, Ross and Don were together, and I now have 2 grandsons who work there. One of Ty's boys, one of Mike's boys. So it's provided for the family, and it's provided for other families in Clayton, and provided employment for, lots of different people who lived here. And I think that's what you would be most proud of, that it was sustainable. Okay, have I covered? You notice I didn't write down a lot of things because I don't write too much.
You know, Franny, I can remember when we were kids, we used to hike up to the dump all the time. It was a big expedition. But we looked so forward to your trucks backing in because of the chance of outdated candy being on them. I don't care if it was that ribbon candy or whatever. If you
I will add on to the LeClaire family had many treats of candy, compliments of Gray's Wholesale via the dump.
Now mostly goes to the food pantry.
Yeah.
No, good.
Okay. Yeah, it gets donated, unless it's really bad, but yes.
The rats are probably missing it, but.
There was one other business I mentioned, Grace, is a business I owned, and that was Thousand Alice Cards and Novelties. When I was 16 years old, my father bought a postcard business from B.O. Kinney, the forerunner to Kinney Drugs. And so we got I remember it was a 58 Ford wagon, put in the back, there was a rack, you could slide all the postcard boxes with all pictures in there, and I went out on the road selling. And I had that business for a number of years. We added souvenirs. And so my summer job was selling postcards and souvenirs to Alex Big, even some Watertown. I used to sell thousands of cards to Woolworths in Watertown. And postcards are kind of gone. They're still around, but they don't sell many of them anymore. And souvenirs, you just have to buy them 60 dozen, 120 dozen at a time. Now, with all this technology, you can get people that know order 40 this or that. They take the picture and they put it on there. So that business kind of faded out. But I will say, after I went back to wholesale in '85, Arnie O'Reilly did it for a couple, 3 years for us, going on the road. And I learned a lesson about second year I was out there. You know, those 35 millimeter slides, the pictures. Well, they made them up so customers could buy them. And I went to Alex Bay, and there was a gift shop down there. The woman was kind of tough. And, I remember we were selling them for $1.25 for a sleeve of 5. And so I went in, and she said, no, you're too high. Of course, we're the only ones they had. So I went back and told my grandfather. And he said, no, she wants to pay $1. He says, no, you have one price, you have it for everybody. Because if you don't, other people are going to find out. And it's going to be more harm. And so I didn't go back down there. And about a couple of weeks later, I was walking down the other side of the street, and they see her. She bought them. $1.25. But I learned that lesson when I was young. Okay, but anyway, when I was doing that, I do in the summer teaching school. One day, Dr. Forbes asked me something about it, and something about getting back in the summer. I said, Dr. Forbes, I make more in the summer than I do teaching school. He kind of drew back like, wow, you know. So, but anyway, that's how I put the 3 kids through college. But then, when they bought Bombards, out back of Bombards, there was 2 motel units, one across the back had 4 rooms, and one right behind the business, which had 2 rooms and a utility room, you know, for all the linen and everything else. That building, once they tore down Bombards, we tore over behind my house up on John Street. I lived right next to the Baptist church, what was the Baptist church. And one of the older houses in town, and put it out back there, and that's where I stored my souvenirs for a few years. Then, when we moved those souvenirs up to the Fish and Game Club. My father bought the Fish and Game Club, going out State Street. If you look, set back in there, right by the village line, there's a green 1-story building, sets them back up. Well, Frank Kirkland lives on one side, and the other side, Clarence Katzmeyer used to live, if you remember him. But that was the Fish and Game Club. Nice hardwood floors, they had dances, all kinds of plates, silverware, so they had dinners there. All right, there was 2 rooms that were like offices, and 2 restrooms. So in the day, I'm sure that held many, you know, activities, but it's just kind of sitting here for the last 30, 40 years. Motels. I can talk about 2 motels. Gray's Motel, which was 8 units, and it was right next to the home. And across the street, there was a motel next to the castle. Sits down in it. That was originally my great aunt and uncles, Thelma and Dick Bamford. And they would come up in the summer. They had 2 girls, and they would run the motel. Okay? They lived in Pearl River, New York, but they would come up here and live in the summer. That was my grandmother's sister. Okay? So, how much time?
We got another up to 25 minutes, so lots of questions.
Oh,
If you ask questions, speak loudly so it comes over to speak on the speaker here.
I was going to talk about a couple more businesses, but they can't ask questions. That
You're-
nobody's mentioned. Chris?
Ernie, going back to Ross's store on the corner, Gay Head,
Yep.
I've always heard the story, the reason it's called Gay Head is that you can stand and see water in 3 different directions.
Okay.
And that's supposedly the definition of Gay Head.
Okay.
I've heard that in England.
That
in
is
England.
correct.
Well, the middle of the park. is a place, that's right. Yeah, I don't know, very well, I don't know, Chris, it probably is
The
true.
river used to come up
Right,
to Becky Pacific's
right,
house
On that side?
before the railroad tracks.
right.
And so you could stand at the store
Store.
and see water in French Bay and
Yeah,
I guess according to the definition, you have to be able to see water 3 ways.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can see downtown. Remember when that was the dome?
yeah.
Or the light field? Oh, things have burned and, yeah, it wasn't the best, but anyway, that was the original village, that was the village dome. How about Vince Cavalerio?
Yeah.
Had a fruit stand on the corner, fruit and Italian bread on the corner of Mary and James Street. Kitty corner from the Catholic Church. When I was young, you go down there, and then Vince left, he went to Alice Bay and bought where their pizza place is now, but he had a grocery store there. Next door to that was Audrey Brabant's, where the boat, what is it, Lyman or something, the association, that little building next to KFC was Audrey Brabant, and she had a little store, ice cream, candy, snacks, that kind of stuff. Her brother Steve was in my class, and she had a daughter Cheryl, a couple of 3 years older. Remember that? Paul Potter's store. I know it was mentioned, but it was mentioned as Consol. That's the liquor store, Bucher's liquor store. But when I was a kid, there was an older couple who ran it, Paul Potter and his wife. They sold candy, tobacco, different things right there. Sadie's custard stand. Remember that? Fritz remembers that.
Yeah.
It is where the Page store is on the corner of Webb and State Street.
Yeah.
But there was
real custard too.
Real custard, yeah. And a few times we were kids, and we'd go up to the golf course and find golf balls. So we'd stop there on the way, and she'd say, "Oh, boys, this thing is so heavy." She had these big things, she had to pour it in the machine. So 2 of us could pick it up and get her started for the morning so she can make custard. And of course, on the way back, we boys stopped. So on the way back, we made sure we stopped and we get a free custard. All right, at Sadie's. Mm-hmm. The Silver Moon.
Tea room.
Tea room. But they had pumps out front. They had gas pumps out front.
I don't remember the gas pump.
I thought they
remember
did.
The Silver Moon.
Silver Moon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was Wyatt Corcoran, I think was their name.
Yeah.
in some old photos, you can see the gas pumps in front of the tea room.
Okay. But anyway, they had a bar. I don't know what they served. I was young. I don't remember eating there, but
Where was that one located? Where was that one?
right where the Sliders convenience store is today. McMolly's. Remember that one?
Down on,
Right on the end of Riverside.
Riverside Drive, just past the little park. I think that was an Airbnb. It had that nice big deck. That was a restaurant for a few years. It was originally, for a while, the American Boat Line made them go through Ellis's, later Culver's. You had to go through the store, down and get on the boat. And of course, what was right there on the aisles? Souvenirs. Okay, so they had it all worked out. How about Fourniers? That's an old one.
What was it again?
Fournier, Fournier, I think it was. It is right next to, it was right next to where the Chamber of Commerce is. On the right hand side of that building. If I remember correctly, I'm sure. He was an artist. He used to do a lot of paintings. I remember having one big opal painting. And they sold souvenirs. They had a son named Bob, who's probably 4 or 5 years older than I am.
I don't know if it's the same person, But in the Legion Hall up on the second floor, there's 4 paintings, and I know it says Fournier or
That's
the
him.
same name.
That's him.
So there's some of his paintings still exist today.
Right, he lived right across, or his store right across the street from the Legion.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, cause I, remember him from being the son, but anyway,
Can I ask a question? You talk about Pulvers, and I've always thought Pulvers is where Kennedy Pharmacy was, and now is today's the gift shop. Was Pulvers there? You said across the street.
Both.
He was both.
Right, they, I think Pulver's bought that from Ellis.
Okay.
And they ran it, Preston Pulver.
Wasn't there a 5 and 10 in that area?
That was Pulver's, right where,
Okay.
where, what is it, Ringers, the gallery is now? Mm-hmm. After Ellis's was gone, right, they just had the store across the street. But I think they had, I know they had Ellis Black, or the store there too.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One thing that's changed that I've noticed, you know what we don't have anymore? Is sports. Town teams, sports. After World War II, Clayton had a town team football team. Because I had my father's uniform, he played, and I donated it to the museum. They have it now. What about basketball? We used to have a team in what was back in the old days called the Border League. Town team, right? I played, I think, 2 years, right near the end of where, you know, where it kind of faded out. Mm-hmm. Softball. Used to have at least 3 softball teams. And when I was like a junior, senior in high school, I kind of, Randy, let's come umpire. So they'd get Mudcat Erlin, Bill Erlin, and I, and we'd help them out. They'd complain the whole game about how bad we were. And then the next day, they'd come and get us again. So, but anyway, I remember doing a few of those, but they had, I think, at least 3 softball teams at one time, and there were leagues. They go to Cape Vincent, Dexter, you know, travel around different places. But those things are all gone. We got lots of more kid sports now, but
Organized.
all
Organized.
Yeah.
That's
But
the difference.
But we don't have adult things. Look how many bowling teams there was.
I think we all know the answer. Television, computer.
Yeah, right, but those things are, and they help build communities. Yes, you knew everybody. All the guys who used to bowl it, you played, we still have golf leagues, but golf leagues, softball, all these other things, you interacted with people.
I was just gonna say, Mike Cole, I've been talking to him recently. We're trying to put together a combined TI and Alex Bay hockey program for adult hockey, anywhere from 19 and older. We're doing our second one-day little tournament actually next weekend, but we're trying to get a USA Hockey official and stuff. So he is actually making a big push for that adult that program.
Yeah, get people doing things. And of course, I coached football for 16 years at the school, and refereed hockey for a number of years. 1972, they built the arena. I had 3 kids in hockey. Barney, who was a good friend of mine, O'Reilly, says, "Granny, I need referees." I said, "Arnie, I don't skate." He said, where do we skate? They had the rink up here at the park, or where the municipal building is. I might have gone over once a year and hung onto the boards, and those skates were so bad in the old days, they didn't give me any support. And I think Mike was what, 5 years old or something, and Risha and Di, they'd skate with me, help me around, I got go around. So then I go up to Old Timers Hockey. They had Old Timers Hockey every Tuesday night, and skate that, and they'd pass me the puck and I'd fall down, but gradually, the more you're on the ice, the better you're gonna get. And so and hockey used to be big Friday night in Clayton. They'd always have 3 games, Peewees, Bantams, Midgets. And they get probably more people than what they had for the high school game here last night. So, but that was the Christmas. I'm done.
Can I ask a question? Now, you taught school for a lot of years, a good share of your life. How did you land on the subject matter that you taught? I mean, your history, right?
Yes.
And how did that come about?
Well, originally, when you're young, you don't know what you're gonna do. I thought maybe I'd be a funeral director now. Then I thought maybe I'd be a dentist. So I went to University of Buffalo, and they put me in that first chemistry class. Oh, what are they talking about? I had no idea. I had chemistry up here, and God bless her soul. Helen Bennett was the teacher. It was the first year she'd ever taught chemistry. And I just wasn't ready. And I decided, I'm already a year behind. And at the end of my freshman year of college, my wife and I got married. So we went back to Buffalo my second year. My father got a trailer for us. We lived right on the edge of Niagara Falls. I remember it was right next to the Bell Laboratories. They worked on those space pack things and all that, the propulsion. And she got a job down Niagara Falls Boulevard waiting on a table. So I would take my classes, go to the library, go down the corner, stick out my thumb, get a ride down to where she worked, and then we go home to Niagara Falls. But we decided that's when I switched to history, and it's funny how that second year my grades got a lot better. After I got married. So anyway, that's what happened. So I transferred to Oswego, moved the trailer up to Oswego, and I always liked history, and so I said I'm going to be history major. That's how it was just something that I chose. It should have been math, because math teachers have a lot less preparation in grading than history teachers do.
Can imagine, yeah. Can imagine.
But anyway, yes, that's how. Then I got a master's degree in Potsdam. We used to go once a week, Shirley, the installment, give right back, Ernie, I get in the car. We go once a week up to Potsdam and take courses and to get our master's. And I only ever had to go to one summer school. And I rode with a guy from Alex Bay, Mike Coro. I see that just recently his wife, Maggie, died, passed away, but yeah. I'm done. Connor?
Anyone else?
I just have a question. How long did we have the trade show?
For a few years, I'll show you that.
That was my favorite time as a kid. Bags and bags of candy.
Okay. Yeah, for a few years, Gray's Wholesale had a trade show. I'm sorry. And what this was, is we rented the arena. And the people who sold to us came up, they set up booths and took orders for product. And then after the trade show, we'd start delivering the product. You could see how much of what you sold and so on. I can't remember how many years, but this one is 2004, early 2000s, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. That sound right, Mike?
Well, what was the first year?
Huh?
What was the first
I
year?
can't remember.
Oh,
I know there's one for 2001, but we put these books out, we give them to our customers, they can bring them to the show, we give away prizes. And, for all the vendors who showed up and wanted to stay, we give them dinner at the Seaway or somewhere, so companies no longer send salesmen. You don't see people like you used to. You know, they cut back on what they're doing. You can order online or all kinds of different ways, but they've gotten bigger. Gray's Wholesale is kind of like a dinosaur. Not many of us around of small wholesalers. They get gobbled up by the big ones. And in fact, we bought a couple of companies. We bought 2 or 3 smaller ones, but Jones McIntosh in Watertown. Back in those days, there was many cigars sold. And they had the franchise for 2 of the big companies. White Owls, William Penn's, Dutch Masters, Phillies. And if we wanted to sell them in their area, we had to buy from them. And so obviously when we take them out to sell them, we're gonna be higher than they are. So they kind of controlled it. So when they offered their business for sale in Watertown, it was right on West Main, just before you turned to Court Street Bridge. There was a building on the right there, red brick. And so we weren't so much interested in that, we wanted those franchises. So we got to be the dealers of all those cigars. And just a few years ago, the last Jones McIntosh in Syracuse, they had one in Ogdensburg, one in Watertown, one in Syracuse. They went out of business. And so we helped them out, bought inventory, and took on a couple of their workers. And at this point now, Mike decided, and we go to Syracuse, we go to Utica. We have a salesman who lives in Syracuse, and we have a delivery man who lives in Syracuse. So we load up the truck, drive it down to Adams or Pulaski or whatever. The other guy comes up, takes the full truck, goes out and delivers. So we never used to go to those places. My wife used to always say, go to Syracuse, there's so many people down there. But it is a different world. It's a different type of customer. It's mostly inner city. Okay, so you have to adjust what you have in inventory to sell to that market. But overall, it's worked out, I would think, at this point. Yes, there's problems, but because if you look up around here, you know, like we talked about, the little stores are gone. That was our bread and butter. But if you go into the small towns, they're still there. Fred?
I worked up there when you bought out Jones McIntosh in Watertown, and back then, cigar companies like General Cigar and Consolidated, they were such competitors, and they used to take us out, treat us to dinner.
Probably, yeah.
And the money they spent, you know, you could have anything you wanted off the menu,
Right.
any drink you wanted, and they were some great parties.
Oh, yeah.
Then also go to the New York State Candy Association to Hinderwald's in Syracuse. Some great parties. They have, you could get steamed clams, all the steamed clams you wanted to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And dinner was usually a half a chicken and a lobster. And all the candy reps were there. And there would be some huge poker games. I remember seeing some of those tables, the money would be piled right up like this. In those poker games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I was about 18 the first time I went to one of those.
Oh, beer you wanted too.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Hinder Brothers Grove. It's in North Syracuse. I don't know, I think they still might be in business, I'm not sure. But yeah, they had two separate clam bakes. They had a softball field, they had worship. After eating all that, there was one guy there who didn't like lobster, so I traded my chicken for his lobster.
Okay, we're probably gonna wrap up this portion of it. We're gonna invite people to stick around, but I'm gonna get something, but while I'm doing it, can you tell me the history of the shirt you're wearing today?
Yeah, I got this out. It had been in the closet for, what, 25 years more? I don't know.
It had to be your sister that did
No,
that. No?
Jim Eberger.
Jim did?
We used to have Christmas parties, and I give everybody kind of a joke gift. And so they gave me this as a gift. But anyway, it's funny how it sits there for 25 years, it shrinks.
All right, so, Franny, on behalf of the sesquicentennial team, myself as the historian, we want to thank you very much for being our guest speaker, hashing over history. But again, wonderful history that you're sharing. I wish I could take the knowledge of all the speakers and put them in my head. It would sure make my job a whole lot easier. But just having you here today, sharing of all this information, the visuals plus the talking, that all adds knowledge in my head. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, feel free to walk around, look at things up here, ask more questions.
Oh.